All right, well, happy Mother's Day to you all. Moms, happy Mother's Day to you guys. This is a special day, and we want to just take a moment right out of the gate to honor you moms in the room, especially in a culture where we live today, where the calling of motherhood, and I use that intentionally, the mission of motherhood is so often very downplayed, and the sacrifice that's required to step in as a mom and raise and pour in and eternally invest in your children is kind of cast aside, honestly, as a lower calling or a sub-calling. And yet, at the same time, if you're a mom, you feel this competing pressure of, am I mom enough, too? So you got both of these things. Hey, this isn't really that significant. You should be chasing everything else in life. And yet, at the same time, but hey, are you mom enough? Can you really hold your own and do all the things that a good mom does? And so in the middle of these really competing pressures, man, today we just want to step into that and say, hey, this is a safe space. This is a place at our church where it's okay to not be okay. But at the same time, we're going to honor moms and hold up this beautiful biblical calling and say, thank you for what you do. So moms in the room, thank you. Seriously. Whether you're a new mom, whether you're a mom of older kids, empty nester, grandmother, whatever it is, hey, thank you. It's a beautiful, biblical, worthy calling. And at the same time, I've been around enough to know that Mother's Day is sometimes a painful day for some people too. Those maybe who have lost moms, those maybe who desire to be a mom but are not. And so we also want to be aware of that pain in the room. If you're new to our church, you're going to find out really quickly our church talks about hard things. We're okay with not being okay. We're not going to skirt those kind of things and just say, hey, it's a safe place to be able to talk about that. If you're struggling with that, at the same time, we want to speak into that and go, hey, you're complete in Jesus even without being a mother. If you're a woman in the room, okay, you don't need to feel less of a female or less of an image bearer of God if you don't have children, okay? And so we want to hold that up at the same time as we say thank you to moms. Okay, well, if you have a Bible, go ahead and turn to the book of Jonah. And if you don't have one, man, we have some free ones. Love for you to grab that back there. The book of Jonah is where we are at, and we are going verse by verse. Today we're in chapter 2, and this one's for Clay. We're going to plunge in today, all right? Ready for that, brother? Ready to dive deep today? Last week we saw chapter 1. It kind of hit us like an action thriller, and I said it was a lot like the Liam Neeson kind of movie where God is simply pursuing what is supposed to be his prophet, but is actually a rebel. He's called Jonah to arise and go. He's called us to arise and go, to take his love to others, to extend that same mercy to others, and yet we have refused and rebelled in our own self-absorbed lives, and so what God has to do is, like Liam Neeson, is to chase us down, and he won't stop at any cost, right? He's going to get us, and that's exactly what we see with his relentless mercy. He's coming after us, and this week, chapter 2, we will see that moment where the collision of that mercy occurs, what it does in our hearts when it happens. Okay, so most of you guys know Matt McMahon's story, one of our elders. We've been praying for him. He was gone for a month. I just want to briefly reference that. I mentioned it a couple weeks ago because it really sets up today really beautifully. So Matt, as you were having gene therapy, those of you who don't know, Matt was born without an immune system, and so he's experiencing some cutting-edge medicine, really, to restore his immune system. And the process was so just really intriguing to me that first you had to receive chemotherapy, that essentially your cells that were not functioning properly had to be killed, had to be wiped out, and kind of almost a clean slate, then for the therapy to be able to be grafted in and take root to recover your immune system. And so all your levels had to plummet before they could actually then be restored, right? And so we're walking through this journey with him, and I think it's such an interesting paradox there, that sometimes in God's economy, his way up is first down, right? And sometimes in order to receive healing, we have to endure something that feels like it's killing us, actually. And so that's what we're going to see today, that God in his relentless mercy is actually going to use a vehicle to rescue you that's not going to feel at all like he's rescuing you. It's actually going to bring you to the end of yourself. I want to ask you this morning, what if what crushed you was actually uncuffing you? What if what swallowed you was saving you? That's what we're going to see. We left right off of the climax, this cliffhanger in 117. It was pretty dramatic, where we see this inbreaking of mercy, and it's a turn. In fact, if you had a Hebrew Bible in front of you, 117 would actually be the start of chapter 2. It's kind of transitioning and creating a turn. It says, and the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And we see again, here we go, the central figure, the central character of the whole book of Jonah. God himself is on the move again. And he's in control of all the variables, right? Kind of like Liam Neeson again, where the bad guys think they've got him, and then we, the audience, are revealed, oh, he's a step ahead, actually. He had it all mapped out and planned out. He knew exactly what he was doing. That's exactly what we see with God. He appoints. What a word. He ordains. He is like the maestro orchestrating everything that is happening. He understands the full range of the cause and effect in every human event. And he sends, at this point, a great fish. Now, we assume this is a whale, right? Like maybe you grew up in church, and so you know from the felt boards, and you know from the kids' Bibles, right? You see the pictures. Like maybe you just watch VeggieTales. I don't know. You got the picture, right? And maybe you're like, I have no clue what you're talking about, veggie what? Well, hey, you've at least seen maybe Pinocchio, okay? So you get like the picture inside the great fish going on here, or Finding Nemo, for crying out loud, right? Swallowed by the whale. We get that picture inside, but we don't know it's a whale. We actually don't know that. It could be a sperm whale, could be a whale shark. Some people think it's a great white. Some people think it's some giant grouper. I don't know, Loch Ness Monster. Like we're kind of up in the air here on what it actually is, but it's a great fish. That's not really important what it is. What is important is that Jonah, at the depth of plummeting to his own judgment, in the face of death, is swallowed, but by being swallowed, he's actually spared. He wasn't eaten, he was sheltered there, which is what 3 days and 3 nights suggests. He survived. This is crazy. He didn't drown, he survived. So this crazy paradox, right? Jonah was devoured in order to be delivered. This is crazy, right? He was consumed in order to be contained. So that's what we see happening. What verse 17, it doesn't feel like it, but it is absolute mercy, and it's mercy that's miraculous. We talked a little bit last week how, you open the book of Jonah, and if you're not maybe too familiar, you're kind of on the edge of Christianity, or maybe you're in kind of some different strains where you go, hey, anything supernatural, like we get into this weird miracle stuff, I'm out on. Can't deal with that, can't handle that. Like if it's not a natural biological process, then I can't handle it. I don't have a framework for it. It's a no. So we have people like not Ben Franklin. Who's our third president? Thomas Jefferson. Sorry, Clay, my bad. Thomas Jefferson, who he literally snipped out his Bible, right? Anything in the Gospels that was supernatural, he took scissors to and cut it out, made his own Bible. So that's what a lot of people do, which is kind of funny to me because on the flip side, our culture is so entertained by the fantasy and the supernatural. So on one hand, we're like, Bible, no, Parting the Red Sea, absolutely not. Then over here, we're eating it up with our movies. And so we're coming at an angle from a Christian worldview where we actually believe that God spoke and created everything. So this is not really that crazy to us. For him to send a fish to swallow a man, and it preserves him. In fact, our whole worldview is built around a man, we said this last week, who was dead for 3 days and then rose himself up, okay? So we are okay with the supernatural. In fact, if there is a God, we should believe and expect him to inbreak into human history and engage humanity. And that's what all the supernatural is. And so here he's doing that, and it's miraculous, right? I mean, Jonah is coming down, descending to his death, and in a moment at just the right time, he is swallowed up with mercy. Remember last week I told you guys the key of this book, we have to see ourselves in Jonah. And so we think about this moment of mercy. We have to see ourselves in this too. You and I, if you're a believer in Jesus in this room, you've experienced the same miraculous mercy that Jonah has. Maybe you go, no, man, I kind of just grew up in the church, I don't have a crazy story, I was born, and, doctor spanked my bottom, I said Jesus, and was in church that next day, I just have always known Jesus. Well, first of all, that story is miraculous if you were saved at age 6, let's say. What God spared you from, a life of heartache, a life of Jonah, of rebelling and running from him, is miraculous. Because you and yourself did not do that. You and your little 6-year-old heart were like Jonah, going down to the bottom. And God scooped you up and saved you. So every bit of mercy in this room, if you're a Christian, is miraculous. And you need to see that. It's God, supernatural, breaking into your human level life and scooping you up. So it is miraculous. And Jonah's coming face to face with this mercy. The next 9 verses are going to show a really cool inside view of his inner life, of what's going on. It's going to switch from narrative to a bit of a poem. And we're going to see really what Jonah's heart was going through in this process of this miraculous mercy. We're going to view a real emotional view from the inside. So verse 1, then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish. All of chapter 1, he was avoiding praying, right? He was running from praying. I don't want to pray. The pagan sailors are praying, but he's not. But now, right, something has shifted, and he's not running from God, he's running to God. Something has made him so desperate that he's willing to turn vertical now to the Lord. Man, isn't that what it so often takes for us, right? We have to be swallowed to finally cry out to God. Now, I asked myself this week, when did this happen? When did he pray? I wonder, was it day 1 in the fish? Was it maybe day 3 at the end? We don't really know. We know kind of the chaos of the event has kind of settled down, and he seems to be able to kind of process and reflect on what's happening. We do know that, but we don't know exactly what part of the process it is. Verse 2, though, he calls out, I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. So this is Jonah's kind of summary right now of what happened. I cried out, God, help me. And notice it says, out of what? Out of his distress, man. Again, sometimes, this word distress, it's like anguish, but in the Hebrew it literally means tightness, which is so appropriate, right? You're in the stomach of an animal. I think it's going to be kind of tight, right? Pressed in. I'm tight. I'm distressed. I was feeling my world caving in on me. And so I cried out in my trauma and in my anxiety and in my affliction. I cried out of the belly of Sheol, which is an Old Testament word for the grave or dead. I was as good as dead, he's saying. I cried out to God in my extreme circumstances. And what's God's response? He hears, he answers. In other words, he rescues. And we learn 2 things about God in this one verse that are profound. God, he is aware of your distress and your situation. He hears. This is the God in the Bible, is the God who sees and who knows. He understands exactly what you're going through, man. Every bit of distress, where you feel pressed in life. Maybe it's financial. I just don't know how I'm going to make ends meet. And every day I wake up, and there it is with me, the pressure of how I'm going to make ends meet. He knows. Maybe it's I don't know how possible I can keep up with the pressures at my work. It's just constant. I have to achieve, and then I succeed in something, but that's not enough, and now it's the next project, and I've got to outdo myself, and my bosses are over me, and the hours just keep elongating, and I just can't handle the pressure. God knows. He hears. He sees. But he doesn't just see your distress. It says he answers. God is not just aware, he cares. He's moved in compassion to mercy for you. He doesn't look at you in your rebellion and in your running away from him and then just go, okay, if that's how you're going to be, I'm going to distance myself from you. We're done. He does not become stoic to you or detach himself to you. What we see here is a God who's drawing near to someone who's in distress. Who's in distress, by the way, because of why? Because of his own sinful rebellion. Okay? But yet the just judge is moving in mercy towards him. This is remarkable. The next few verses are going to show us kind of a vivid recollection Jonah has of the crisis. Verse 3, cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the flood surrounded me. Your waves and your billows, they passed over me. So he's describing the drowning process. He's going under. Maybe he fought for a little bit. Maybe he bobbed and he scrambled. But there wasn't a door to hold on to, right? Sorry, Rose. Jonah didn't have that. And so eventually he begins to descend under, and you can just feel like he's beginning to be engulfed by the water, right? And this is vivid. But as it's happening, notice the pronoun I have here. For you casts me into the deep. This is very profound and very important. He's coming to grips with what's happening being divine justice. I deserve this. Remember we preached a few weeks ago, Romans 8:1, therefore there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. First, we got to understand, well, we deserve condemnation. J.I. Packer, in his book, Knowing God, if you haven't read it, fantastic book. He talks about grace and mercy in a way that so many of us, we throw those words out. They're church words. Yeah, God's gracious. He's full of mercy. But we ourselves haven't really experienced it. We haven't made it personal. It's not really true conversion. And it's not until he says a couple critical truths have to occur about mercy first. And the first one is that I need it. It's so simple, right? But that it's not optional. It's not like, oh yeah, I'll take some joy and peace with the side of mercy in my life. It's like, this is mandatory. This is mandatory. I'm at the doorstep of death here. I've got no option, right? And this is so critical in our culture where we hear almost all day we're being pounded with a message that our biggest problem is we don't have enough self-esteem, right? And where you have guilt and shame, those are just external constructs put on to you by social standards that really just people are making up for what's right for them, okay? And so you shouldn't feel any of that. And into this is coming an offensive message from the Bible going, no, you deserve judgment. But you have to get that. Because if you don't get that, then mercy is meaningless. You don't think you need it. Jonah knows he needs it. Verse 4, so I said, I'm driven away from your sight. He's concluding that he's being separated from God. This is death. This is like his final word saying, I'm done. It's over for me. Yet I shall look again upon your holy temple. So in my last kind of action, I'm going to go out looking at you. The temple is kind of a symbol of God's presence, right? I'm going to go out turning my face at least towards God. This is my last kind of hurrah, my last hope and prayer. Verse 5, the waters closed in over me to take my life. Literally, it closed in over me. They were at my throat. Couldn't breathe, he says. They encompassed me. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped about my head. So literally, he's going under for good, man. He's sinking beneath the waves right here. You guys ever had a near-death experience? Yeah, probably, right? I've had a few near-death experiences. One that I vaguely remember, but it's so interesting as I think back about it. And kind of, I've been told more on the outside. I was 5 years old, and we were driving on the Turner Turnpike, and it was raining, and we were driving like a like an 88 maybe, Caravan. It was teal, Dodge Caravan. You remember these old vans? You guys remember? It was like not as cool as the Astro vans. I don't know if you ever had an Astro. Those suckers were cool. It wasn't quite that cool. It was a Dodge Caravan. It was this crazy teal color. Anyways, I don't know why they would sell that. And we're driving, and my mom begins to hydroplane in the water. And we clip. She's trying to get over to the side to stop. And we clip the back of another car. We could barely see. It was just pouring rain. We flip. We go airborne, and we flip into the ditch, land upside down. and it's just this crazy silence occurs. I vividly remember the silence. And apparently I broke the silence as a 5-year-old, and I yelled, "I'm dead!" I said, "I'm dead. Mom's dead. We're all dead." That's what I said, which I think kind of cut through some of the tension of the moment and brought some relief, which was kind of nice. But in that moment, man, that was most of our near-death experiences are sudden, right? Like that, right? Like they just happen, we're like, "Oh," whew, and then we feel relief. Glad that didn't happen. That's not what Jonah's feeling. It's more of a process. Like I'm experiencing death happening and I'm aware of it. Okay, that's what's going on. The weeds were wrapping around me, which is such poetic language. Like I'm feeling entangled. I'm in a straitjacket under the ocean. The imagery of verse 5 is an imagery of trapped. I don't know, maybe you feel like that a bit in life. Life feels a bit trapped for you. Maybe physically you're in pain and there's just a constant on your life. You wake up, there's just chronic pain. It's not going anywhere. And you feel that entrapment. Maybe it's an addiction that is dragging you under. Pills, social media, porn, shopping, a relationship that's unhealthy. You've plunged yourself into that and it's weighting you down to the bottom. Maybe instead of that, it's you feel surrounded by depression and anxiety. And maybe you've been bobbing in that for a little bit, but it's starting to overtake you. The breakers are starting to wash over you. Maybe it's grief. You lost someone you loved, man, and the grief comes back like wave after wave after wave, and it slams your body so much that you're beginning to break. It could be finances, like I said, family, and all the dysfunction that goes with that. It could be friendships that are toxic, or you felt betrayed by. Whatever is slamming into you, begin to feel capsized. You begin to feel trapped. Where is my life? I just feel this pressure. Have you ever been there and felt a little bit like what Jonah was experiencing? Certainly not literally, no. Well, spiritually, this is exactly where all of us in this room are. The situation it's painting is the situation of humanity. That humanity was plunging down to the depths, being trapped, being hemmed in, feeling the pressure and the weight of our just judgment for mistrusting God and running our own way. You feel trapped and maybe you feel hopeless. That's a bit like verse 6, the next words. At the roots of the mountains I went down. Like you think about land is just a mountain in the water, right? In fact, the tallest mountain on our planet is, I think, one of the Hawaiian mountains, right? It's higher than Everest because of how deep it goes. So he said, I went down to the foundation, the very base of the mountain. Not literally, right? He's saying, man, I was just sinking all the way to the ocean floor. I'm hitting rock bottom is what he's saying. And at rock bottom, the land with its bars were closing upon me forever. What a picture, like an underwater prison. The bars are coming around him. I'm not going to be able to escape death. See, what we have here is Jonah understanding the second thing that J.I. Packer talks about. You got to understand that to really experience mercy, you've got to feel your own impotence. In other words, you got to feel your own inability. I can't save myself. Jonah gets that. I'm underwater. I got nowhere to go. I'm in prison, right? He's not Bruce Wayne. He's not going to climb himself out of the pit. He can't do it. God's finally brought him to the point where he's being stripped of his self-sufficiency, where all his resources are exhausted and his pride is being crushed. He's got nothing left. And that's exactly where God wanted him. Maybe you feel a bit like that hopeless feeling in life. There's no way out. Other characters in the Bible, Abraham, Moses, David, Peter, had to come to this kind of place where they gripped their own sin and they saw their failure and their weakness and they felt the judgment and they met God face to face with his mercy. Maybe, church, hear me out here. Maybe you going under is God's plan all along. What if? What if you drowning is God delivering and he's bringing you to the end of yourself? He's weaning you off of your self-trust and your false hopes. He wants you to lead you to the real thing. I think Jesus says something along those lines, right? In order to gain your life, you've got to lose it. That's what we're talking about here, man. I'm a bit of a weather nerd. My fellow weather nerds in here. There's a few of us who have some instrumentation in their backyards and love to look at things and gauge things. And so I was watching Discovery Channel one time, this series called Raging Planet. It was on floods. And they were documenting this flood in, of all places, Las Vegas. Okay? Middle of the desert. And torrential, whatever, rain comes down and it creates these massive like rivers in the middle of the city. And they show this lady, her name is Angela. And Angela was trapped in her car, and her car began to be washed away. And somehow, it was a multi-hour ordeal. She climbs, as the waters were getting higher, she climbs out of the car onto the roof, right? That's what sometimes people do. And then it just keeps getting faster, it's being taken away. And there's footage showing her. And somewhere along the lines, like the waters keep rising, she decided to just, I'm done. Like, I'm going to die. Like, she came to grips with it. So the footage is showing her just laying on her back on the top of her car. Arms spread out. Her eyes were closed, she would later say. She had no idea what was going on. She had just yielded herself up. And the footage shows this man in a moment plunging down from a helicopter and scooping her right up. And she didn't know. Like, she's shocked by it. Like, you see her like jump when he touches her because she was just out. Like, she had yielded and given up, man. And he scoops up and grabs her and rescues her back to life out of nowhere. That's exactly what we see here. I was down, the bars were closing in on me, but yet you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord, my God. Another powerful but God, right? We see this decisive turn. You snatched me up from the jaws of death, God. And this whole book, we've been seeing down, 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 down. And for the first time now, we see the word up. I went down to Joppa. I went down into the boat. I went down into the inner part of the ship. I went down into the ocean. Everything has been descending this whole book. And finally, verse 7, we get it. Verse 6, in steps God, and he brings his life up from the pit. What if God's way up is first down? He wants to flip the script and change your trajectory, but first we got to go down. My life was fading away, verse 7. On the doorstep of death, I remembered the Lord. Not remembering, it's not like I remembered God exists. Like, he knows that, right? Chapter 1, he knows God exists. This I remember the Lord is I remembered his character. I remembered who he is. I remember what he's like. And chapter 4 shows us that the Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. That's what he remembers in this moment of deepest, darkest need. He remembers that the Lord is gracious and merciful. Maybe he'll be merciful to me. He remembers who God is. And it moves him to do something he hasn't done yet. Pray. Stop talking about God, and I'm going to start talking to him. I remember the Lord in my prayer. It came to you. It actually met you. You were willing to listen, and you heard in your holy temple. It's amazing, right? It's like his prayer, imagining this SOS call, like reaching the temple and making its way through the curtain, the Holy of Holies, into the inner sanctuary of his throne. It actually got to you. You heard me. He's almost like astounded by that. Me, unholy me, my prayer made it to you, holy God. And as he's visualizing the temple, I guarantee you something's going through his mind, because he knows that the unholy cannot come to the holy unless something happens. Atonement. And so he's a prophet. He knew what would happen in that inner place, that once a year, a day of atonement, Yom Kippur, would happen, where the priest would go into the Holy of Holies and sprinkle blood on the Ark of the Covenant. You know what the Ark of the Covenant is? You've seen Indiana Jones, right? Come on, you know this. You throw up a picture of the Ark of the Covenant. It is this gold, completely solid table, basically chest, that at the top you would have these two kind of angelic beings, angels kind of standing aside, and in the middle would be called a special place called the mercy seat, where the presence of God would be said to dwell. It was the metaphor. It was imaging the presence of God right there in the middle. See, this is profound. Jonah is saying that my prayer was received because of blood-bought mercy. He doesn't understand the full scope of the New Testament, but he understands mercy that was costly was needed for my prayer to be heard. He gets that, which is the third thing that J.I. Packer says you got to get to have mercy. I need it. I can't save myself, but it's come to me with extreme measures and costly sacrifice. You get those three things, and you begin to understand mercy at a personal level. Now, one thing we can't overlook in that verse is the critical nature of prayer in the middle of God's mercy. Prayer is actually the means by which desperate people are connected to a merciful God, right? They cry out, we lament, we run to him. So are you calling out to God in the middle of your distress? You go, well, Tyler, no, I've done that. Like, I've prayed enough. Like, my prayers are hitting a ceiling, dude. Like, I don't hear from God. He doesn't answer. It's like left on red constantly. I don't get anything back from God. I want to encourage you for a moment. If that's you, please look at me right now. Don't stop. Do not stop praying. Don't stop. Well, he's not hearing me, Tyler. Maybe you're not far enough down yet. I hate to say that. I don't want to say that. But maybe that's what's happening. Tyler, he's not answering me. Maybe he has more to expose in you first. Where is he, Tyler? Maybe he's at work loosening your grip. And I say that not callously. I say that thinking about the own things in my life God has done that for me in. I know it's not fun to go further and further down, but maybe that is God's mercy. I promise you he's right there. He's keeping your tears in a bottle. He's compassionately at work. He's enduring your tantrums and your protests very patiently along the way. And he's even sending storms and fish to deliver you. You may not see it right now, but don't stop crying out to him. What's the alternative? Let me ask you that. What's the alternative? Verse 8 is the alternative. Paying regard to vain idols. You want to stop crying out to the living God, then you can go to replacement gods. Literally the word vain idols, empty nothings. You can go to empty stuff if you want. If you want to be delivered by empty things, maybe you thrust yourself into your job, right? This is what's going to give me meaning and worth and give me significance. Maybe it's a relationship where I'm going to feel needed by someone else. That will propel me out of this pit. It could be anything, right? A higher standard of living, more money. Anything we will look to. A different image, medicine, sexual pleasure, a hobby that you dive into, whatever you run to, whatever you cling to, or maybe a better way to put it with this verse, whatever you pray to. That's essentially what you're doing. It will not deliver, Jonah is saying. And in the process, you forsake your hope of actual deliverance. That's what it says. You forsake their hope of steadfast love. This is real hope. Oh, this is my favorite word in the Old Testament Hebrew. Hesed is the word. And I won't say it like that again because you might think I'm going to be hawking loogies. I'll just say hesed, okay? But it is the most beautiful word in all the Hebrew language. It means covenant, steadfast love. You've heard me preach on it before a couple years ago. It combines faithfulness of God and the kindness of God, and it connects them through a costly sacrifice to do it. There's not a single greater word to describe God in the Old Testament. In fact, this is the most common word used to describe him. You want to know what God is like? He's hesed. his covenant love. He's one way, unstopping, unilateral, I won't quit on you ever kind of love. He doesn't say, hey, if you do this, then I'll do this. No, he simply says, I will. I will love you, and there's nothing that you can do about it. You're faithless to me, I'll remain faithful. You bail on me, I won't bail on you. I will not divorce you, he says. This is hesed. And Jonah's saying, don't ever quit on that for empty nothings. Steadfast covenant love is your only real hope. Wow, what a theological arrow Jonah fires from the belly of this fish. This is his conclusion. Everything else that you look to won't deliver. You have one real hope. And so, because we have a covenant God full of covenant love, verse 9, here's the change that occurs in Jonah. With a voice of thanksgiving. Now, we know that's a change, right? Because we saw chapter 1. That dude was anything but thankful. Like, that's not on his high list of, characteristics of Jonah. Thankful is not one of them. But now with a voice of thanksgiving, he's going to shout to God and praise, and he's going to vow to continue to praise, because I don't want to just do it one time. I want an ongoing life of gratitude and thanking you. And then he kind of ends with this culmination and this shout, right? Salvation belongs to the Lord. As he's been piecing together what's happened in this mercy of somehow God delivering him from this judgment, he kind of ends it with that. Oh my goodness, salvation belongs to God. In other words, salvation is found in God, nothing else. Salvation is done by God, not me. Salvation is owned by God. I don't get to determine who gets mercy and who doesn't, aka Nineveh in chapter 1. He now relinquishes everything and goes, salvation belongs to the Lord. Now notice, this is really critical. We have to get this. He says all of this before he spit out. Verse 10 hasn't come yet. He doesn't get spit out on dry land, jump up and go, salvation belongs to the Lord. He's saying it inside his stomach. There's a guy named Jacques Ellul says about this. Jonah has not been answered if we take the answer to be rescue from the belly of the fish. But he has been answered if we take the answer to be adoption under the care of God, who takes on the totality of our sufferings, dramas, and situations. He is answered because mercy does not fail in any way. Events have taken place without any indication of a favorable intervention. He doesn't know how this is going to turn out. He probably thinks he's going to end up in the digestive tract of this fish, and that's how he's going to die. Only signs of judgment. But simply in the very fact that he's been able to repent, to condemn himself, to recognize the sentence of the just judge, and see atoning temple sacrifice, he has reason enough to say, you've delivered me. And it is here indeed that the great change is taken. Salvation is not being spit out on the dry land. It's the heart change that happens in Jonah. He's not the same man as he was in chapter 1. Now granted, chapter 4 is going to show us a relapse, okay? He's not there yet. He hasn't arrived, which gives us a lot of hope. But it does mean that this mercy is meaningful. Hasn't saturated him yet, but it has slammed into him. And so we see, you guys, that mercy is first miraculous. We've seen a mercy that's mandatory. We've seen a mercy now that's meaningful. It changes him. Verse 10, we see a mercy that's missional. And the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah out upon the dry land. The Lord speaks, he commands with a word, and the fish obeys. Apparently God does speak whale. You guys were wondering about that. And he vomits Jonah out on the land, which I just imagine, like you're taking a stroll on the beach, just imagine seeing that, like, what just happened, right? Now catch this. While Jonah had been sitting, the fish had been swimming. 3 days, 3 nights were not wasted. There was movement here all along. He was en route. There was a destination the whole time, back towards Palestine. God's plan had not been thwarted despite Jonah's best attempts to run. There was a destination all along, and he's going to get there even if he's got to take the long road to do it. Hear me out, church. Your pain is always going somewhere. Always. Well, I don't feel it going somewhere. I know. I don't see it going somewhere. I know. Jonah didn't either. In fact, we got to get right back in the story, I think, a little bit. I want to wrap it up by reminding us that we got to feel the scene a little bit, because we think Jonah in this fish, and we see the vaulted ceilings, right? And we think like the lantern that Geppetto's got, and like he's rowing on a boat or something in the middle of this thing. And we don't really get the picture, again, that this is pressed in, man. He's cramped. He's got nowhere to move. This is not a Disney cruise. And not only is he cramped, but imagine he's fighting, he's gasping for every breath. I just don't even know how that's even possible, but somehow God made it possible that there's some amount of air going in there for him to continue to breathe. He's got no drinkable water for 3 days and 3 nights. He's immensely dehydrated. I doubt he has any food. If he does have food, I don't want to go there, okay? And can you imagine just the environment, just the smell, the burning acid that's splashing on? I mean, just horrific, right? Not only that, he couldn't see. Total darkness. Like every one of his senses is being pricked here to traumatic levels. I mean, we think, oh yeah, God saved him. I don't think Jonah's thinking that when the fish swallows him. He's not thinking, yay, God saved me. He's thinking out of the frying pan into the fire. Seriously, God? This is how you want me to die? You want to drag it out and torture me? So we need to remember something, that sometimes miraculous mercy is also miserable mercy. That to be saved, we have to be swallowed. It's not what we want. No one draws it up like that, right? No one draws up their rescue plan like this. No, we see Iron Man and we're like, I want that, you know? Can you scoop me up like that? Sometimes mercy has to be miserable. It's the only way to get us to the end of ourselves. So Tim Keller says, no human heart will dare to believe in such free and costly grace unless it is the only hope. Another way to say it is, unless Jesus is all that you have, you won't know that he's all that you need. See, distress awakens us, right? Doesn't it? C.S. Lewis called it God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Maybe that's exactly what God's doing. He's waking you up. He's taking you down to wake you up. He's swallowing you in order to save you, church. Yeah, salvation sometimes is severe, but what if that's what is necessary? So as we begin to respond and sing and just think about these truths right now, man, I know some of you in this room, I know some of your stories. I know what you've been through, and I know that that's what we're seeing here is exactly what the Lord has done in your life. He's taken you to the very bottom. He's brought you to that point, not where you were clinging to your own hope and what you had left, but really to where you abandoned everything. You finally opened your hands and say, okay, I'm yours. See, chapter 1, we see the danger of running from God's will. But chapter 2, we see the deliverance of what? Submitting to God's will. When you actually come under his hand and yield yourself, deliverance occurs. Don't miss the point here. We have chapter 2 because of chapter 1. Jonah did not want to take mercy to other people. And so what does God have to do? He's got to show him that he needs this mercy too. So as we read Jonah, we got to remember, listen, if we're not taking this message of mercy to others, maybe we haven't experienced it first ourselves. Or we need to re-experience it. We need to be reminded of it. To be reminded that I do need this. I really am this bad on my own. And I can't fix myself, not even just a little. And that God's mercy really is a big deal, and it's cost him greatly. We need mercy. We need mercy that's miraculous, that's meaningful, mercy that's missional, and maybe sometimes we need mercy that's miserable. Well, church, the beauty of chapter 2 and what we're going to sing about is that it's come. In fact, this mercy is a man. We flip the pages and we see in the New Testament where it says salvation belongs to the Lord. That word in the Hebrew is Yeshua, salvation. We see a man come who has that name, and he embodies this mercy. And he exudes it, and he extends it with every single breath he takes on this planet. He is mercy. And then he walks into the Holy of Holies. Behind the veil, he rips it, and he sprinkles his own blood on that seat on our behalf so that we can enter into the very presence, and our cries for help can be heard by a holy God. He doesn't only sprinkle himself on the mercy seat. You know what? He is the mercy seat. John 20:12, we see Mary come into the tomb. And where Jesus is laying, you know what she sees? An angel on the left and the right, clouding over exactly where Jesus was. It was empty, symbolizing the living presence of God. He's alive. So church, today, it's simple. Fling yourselves onto the mercy of God. Throw yourselves with all desperation onto his mercy. And if you've done that and you understand this mercy I'm talking about, then celebrate it today. And come up, if you're a believer in Jesus, when we sing, come up whenever you want, whenever you're ready. We'll grab this bread out of the bowl and dip it into the cup, and that's just symbolizing the very blood, the very body of Jesus that was broken and shed for you. And if you're not a believer in Jesus, then we're inviting you not to these elements. We're inviting you to him. Like, throw yourselves at the feet of Jesus. I guarantee you he hears and he will answer. Our God loves to deliver. So pray with me now, church. Father, we thank you that your mercy is relentless. It doesn't stop. You don't show us some mercy, but then get tired of us. You keep coming after us. God, I thank you that there is amazing deliverance that is available to us when we would submit to your will. We pray right now, God, that in the midst of feeling pressed and feeling distressed and feeling what feels like anything but mercy maybe in our lives. It feels like distress and suffering and pain, and it's hard and it hurts. God, may we know that you are perhaps swallowing us to save us. God, bring us to the end of ourselves. And so we yield right now. We submit under your mighty hand. We cry out to you, trusting that you will hear us and that you are at work even when we can't see it. In Christ's name we pray.